All right, welcome back to the She Inspires podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jade, board certified family medicine physician, wellness and weight loss specialist, owner of the membership medical practice Inspire Primary Care in Las Vegas. And I am so excited to talk about this topic today, and that is overcoming imposter syndrome. I wanted to share a little bit about my journey when it came to that. I get asked a lot about, well, how are you so confident and how this, how that? And I'm like, honey, that is not how it has looked. And I have grown into this, and I'm still not perfect when it comes to imposter syndrome. But I want us to chat about it because I hear a lot of younger people and even people my age and older talk about this term imposter syndrome. So I looked it up for y'all, and I want to share 3 things that have helped me overcome imposter syndrome. And so let's see. I looked at, Chat GPT, and they gave me a little definition. Okay. It says that imposter syndrome is defined as a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments and have a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite evidence of their competence or success. So some tips that I have learned that have helped me to overcome imposter syndrome. Number 1 is knowing that you are enough. Knowing that you are enough, and making this personal for me is I had to know that I was enough. Thankfully, I had a wonderful family who poured into me, who told me all the time, you are smart, you are beautiful, you are intelligent, you are a child of God. Your hair is beautiful, your skin complexion is beautiful. All of these things that I really needed, those affirmations were put into me early on. That really helped, because when I got into the world and I was told your hair is not perfect, your skin complexion is not perfect, your curves are not perfect, your brain is not perfect, your GPA and all of that, it's not pretty. It's not what you need to go where you want to go. And I just realized, like, wow, I'm going to really need to toughen up, and I'm really going to need some thick skin. And it took time. It took trial and error. It took falling apart. Just a quick story. So, thinking of my challenges during my medical journey, I remember there was a medical conference, my first ever medical conference. So I went to UNLV for biology pre-med, and they were hosting a medical conference. And I was super excited because I had never been to one. And I remember being the only Black person in the room at this medical conference as a pre-med student. And I just remember walking into the room and no one would talk to me. I would walk over to a group of people and then they would stop talking and it would get awkward. And I remember just feeling like I did not belong. I ran out of the conference and I ran to the bathroom and I cried and I cried and I cried. And my grandmother, I called her. And I said, they act like I don't belong, and maybe I don't belong. And I say I want to be a doctor, but if this is what doctors act like, I don't know if I want to be one. And my grandmother was like, okay, let me give you 1 more minute to let your tears out. And now be reminded of who you are. You are enough. You do belong there. You will be a physician. Now I want you to wipe your tears, go back into that conference and finish out the conference. And that was just a lesson to me. Now, decades later, right? People look at me 15 years later, people look at me and they're like, you walk into spaces that may or may not be diverse, and you look like you are confident and you're able to speak on these stages. And how do you do that? And I'm like, it didn't always look like this. It did not. And I did not feel like I belonged at that time. And imposter syndrome, although I didn't have that vocabulary to call it that at the time, there were so many times where my cohorts would ask me, well, are your parents doctors? And I had to be like, well, no one in your family's a doctor. Well, no. And you think you can be a doctor? Just like little things like that would try to deposit doubt into me before I even got started. And I had to remind myself, I am enough. God has me. He's called me a doctor, so I will be a doctor. So that's my first tip when it comes to imposter syndrome, is knowing you are enough. And then that transitions into my tip number 2. And that is surrounding yourself with believers, surrounding yourself with people that speak life into your dream, because there are going to be times where you feel like you're enough and there's going to be times where you don't. And it's those people who are in your corner in those times where you're down, when you're down on your luck, when your mood is down, when you're feeling unsure and not confident. those are the times you need people in your corner that can remind you who you are, remind you of who God called you to be, and can help you get back up, right? And can sit in it with you and let you have that moment, but also are like, no, don't forget who you are. And so I'm so thankful that my family, my mom, dad, grandma, they were that for me. Then once I met my husband, he became that for me, my husband, Carlos. And now I have amazing friendships that are remind me of that when I feel weak and when I feel low and when I feel unsure and insecure. Yes, it still happens today. But surrounding myself by believers, that is a big part of what has helped me to overcome imposter syndrome. And then my number 3 thing is tunnel vision. Tunnel vision. And this can be, plus or minus, but like a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you categorize it and what lens we're looking at it through. But one thing that has really helped me is really trying to be intentional about looking at my finish line, keeping my eyes on my prize, not getting distracted by shiny things and not getting distracted by shortcuts. I have definitely had trial and error and ups and downs in this. I have tried to take shortcuts and I have tried to get to destinations quickly, and I have stumbled and fallen. And I've learned that, you know what, we need joy in the journey. We need to enjoy the journey. We already talked about on another podcast episode, enjoying the scenic route, right? And knowing that our grass is green now, but the comparison of it all, right? Like, oh, well, they're going straight through medical school and straight through residency without taking a break or without failing the MCAT or without repeating a year. And I had to remind myself, and I continuously remind myself now that I'm an entrepreneur. And it's very easy, I surround myself with entrepreneurial friends, and it's easy to be like, how much in revenue is your business getting? Oh my goodness. Okay, well, what services do you offer? Well, what price do you charge? And that imposter syndrome, y'all, it can never end. As we live life and we transition to different seasons of life, that can be an ongoing battle, but I have to continue to remind myself, your finish line, what God has called you to is for you. What doors he's opened for you, he will not close. And so just really sitting in that. So in summary, y'all, things that have helped me to overcome imposter syndrome, knowing that I am enough, surrounding myself with other believers, and having tunnel vision. And I'm not perfect in these things, but they're the things that are continuously helping me in this season of life, although it looks different now that I'm in this stage of my profession, but it's still a continuum. And so I'm hoping that this will help you, reach out to me, join our fam at Dr. Jade MD. I would love to hear from you. What are some things that you've struggled with? What are some topics you want to hear on the podcast? And what are some things that have helped you to overcome imposter syndrome? Definitely drop it and let us know. DM me. I want to hear from you. And I'll see you on the next episode of the She Inspires podcast.